Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am your host, Steve Bisa. I'm an author and mental health counselor. Are you curious about therapy? Do you feel there is a lot of mystery about therapy? Do you wonder what your therapist is doing and why? The goal of this podcast is to make therapy and psychology accessible to all by using real language and straight-to-the-point discussions. This podcast wants to remind you to take care of your mental health, just like you would your physical health. Therapy should not be intimidating. It should be a great way to better health. I will demystify what happens in counseling, discuss topics related to mental health, and discussions you can have with your therapist. I also want to introduce psychology in everyday life, as I feel most of our lives are enmeshed in psychology. I want to introduce the subtle and not so subtle ways psychology plays a factor in our lives. It will be my own mix of thoughts as well as special guests. So join me on this discovery of therapy and psychology. Hi, and welcome to episode 49 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am Steve B. So if you haven't listened to episode 48 yet, please do so. Jen Nakai is an amazing guest. I've known her for a while. We talked about social inequality. We talked about substance abuse inequality, as well as other stuff that's related to inequalities. And I thought that it was a great conversation, so I hope you take time to do so. But episode 49 will be about dark humor. Why do I talk about dark humor? Because I think it gets a bad rap. So we can define dark humor all you want, and I can definitely do that as a kind of humor that treats sinister subjects like death, disease, deformity, handicap, or warfare with bitter amusement. This comes from a research that was done a few years ago. And I like that definition. I think it gives a good situation as to what it is. But I also think that dark humor is something that's misunderstood. And what I mean by that is that I feel like dark humor is something that we need in certain situations in order to deal with a lot of stressors and trauma. It comes in handy in the medical field. I hear that a whole lot in the medical field. I obviously hear it a lot with first responders, heard that in correctional settings, and I've heard it from different type of settings where there's a lot of stress, whether it's surgeries or working with difficult people in general. And what I really like about dark humor is that dark humor is something that helps you alleviate a lot of distress. And that's what I really use it for me. Sometimes getting dark is helpful to just take some stress out of it. And it also helps individuals kind of process it more effectively, because we can go, oh, that was dark, but then we can kind of like process, why is it dark? Why did we do that? And why did we need to do that in order to handle the situation that was in front of us? So I really enjoy talking about dark humor a lot. Is it for everyone? Of course not. And you also have to use some judgment in regards to it too. So I don't use dark humor with every one of my clients, but I tend to do so, especially for individuals who work in the fields I talked about. But I also know that people who are probably part of some difficult situations in their past, they want to use dark humor in order to kind of like work on it. And there's been a research that was done in 2014, and it talked about how using dark humor triggers proportionally more emotions than negative emotions. And what that means is that it is something that is helpful for us to kind of like deal with what is going on in front of us. Morbid jokes, or whatever you want to call them, it has a lot of history and research, which was very surprising. I'm laughing because I was looking for some research and like, oh, there's actually more than I thought. And there's a benign violation theory, which is coming from Peter McGraw. And he talks about how a good joke is usually characterized by a wicked twist and good timing. And that violation must be benign and hit a sweet spot. So for the right audience, that violation isn't so bad. But for some people, that kind of could be something that we push a little too hard. Dark humor, according to McGraw, also forces the listeners to take new perspective and a novelty that they're not used to. And if you look at any type of stand-up comics, some of them use that on a regular basis. And for me, it's something that I need in general in order to deal with that. At the end of the day, though, I think that having high Black humor preferences and it shows high comprehension, high nonverbal and verbal intelligence, and that they typically have less mood disturbance and low aggressiveness. I'm saying that this is my point of view. I lied. This is not my point of view. This is from a research that was done in 2017 in the cognitive process and how the emotional demands of Black humor processing and how it affects individuals as well as how they are treated. So you may ask why I'm doing a lot of reading here and research, because I want to talk from the heart in regards to dark humor. And for me, dark humor is what makes me sane. And I know that for some people that would be the exact opposite. But at the end of the day, I hear a lot of difficult stuff on a regular basis. I'm a trauma therapist. I've worked with bereavement for years, and working with individuals who deal with trauma on a day to day basis and having to process that. I need some sort of outlet. Is it always appropriate? No, I try to keep it to a specific crowd, or I talk about it with certain people, but I definitely choose who I talk about in regards to my dark humor. Would I want to share everything here on this podcast around dark humor? Not really. I have some favorite dark humor jokes that I think most people would be offended. And since I'm trying to keep my podcast audience as high as I can, I'm going to keep it to myself. But if you ever want to hear any from me, how about you buy me a coffee and we can go down that road, so to speak. And why do I do that? Because I need it. And if you have individuals in your life that work in difficult situations, difficult jobs, that have a lot of stress, sometimes that's the best stress reducer. And again, the research shows that. So that is why I use dark humor. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please let me know. Episode 50 will be a review of the whole year. Yes, season 4 is almost over. And it's a full year that I've been doing that. I appreciate the support. I hope you continue supporting me throughout the next few seasons. And I promise that the guests are only getting better. And I'm getting a hang of talking on this microphone with no one there really, but knowing that there's an audience on the other side listening to me. Please like, subscribe, or follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for information, educational, and entertainment purposes. If you are struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor or therapist for consultation.